Hello, everybody. I'm Alex Rude on the WILDLABS team, and I'm going to be your host today for the March Variety Hour. First off, we have three amazing speakers today, and they are Janey Fugate, Santiago Martinez Balvanera, Samantha King, and Akos Ledeczi. So first off, I'm going to pass it over to Janey, who's going to kick things off by sharing more about the launch of the new Atlas of Ungulate Migration. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Janey to get us started.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, like she said, my name is Janey, and I work for the Global Initiative on Ungulate Migration, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the atlas that we are building and just launched. Sorry, a little delay. Okay, so a bit of context first. So animal migration, which is one of the most spectacular ecological phenomena that we can observe in the natural world when animals move back and forth between seasonal ranges. This is something that scientists have been studying for a long time. Probably the most iconic migration are the Serengeti wildebeest pictured here, but there are actually many migrations still being discovered and documented today around the world. And we know that migrations are essential to ecosystems, so animals actually enhance the quality of the vegetation on the landscape when they move through different areas. They also provide a prey base for predators. And increasingly, migrations are threatened due to habitat fragmentation, climate change, infrastructure development around the world, but we have a lot of tools to conserve them. And one of these tools is GPS tracking technology, so we can collar animals and then use that technology to monitor where they're moving on the landscape. So we can get GPS points that allows us to see individual migration routes, and then from those we can derive population level corridors. And often this GPS tracking data isn't available for populations on the landscape. So when that happens, we usually don't have a good sense of the scale of these migrations, where animals are moving, what seasonal ranges are really critical for them. So often migrations are being lost or severely truncated before we have a good sense of where they are and before we can do any kind of robust monitoring. And even sometimes when we have this GPS data, it isn't easily accessible or available to people that are making decisions about infrastructure projects, for example, like this railway pictured here. So that's why a few years ago, a group of migration experts and movement ecologists came together to form the Global Initiative on Ungulate Migration. This is a project that's being implemented under the auspices of the UN Convention on Migratory Species. And our main goal is to build an atlas of ungulate migration that encompasses one day all of the migrations around the world and makes this data readily available and publicly accessible to conservation planners. So this atlas is now hosted on CMS's website. We launched it last year in September, and so you can go to a population, navigate to where it is on the landscape, and see. Our methodology is we try to map high, medium, and low use corridors, and so having this sort of tiered look at a population's movements allows you to make more hopefully fine-scale decisions on how to conserve or mitigate development. So it just allows planners to prioritize conservation actions by seeing this high, medium, and low use migration corridors. So in each migration comes with, you can see this button down here in the lower left. You can click that and then download the shape files associated with that migration. So you can pull in these GIS data and then use it in your own spatial planning software. That's kind of the main feature of this atlas that we believe is hopefully going to make an impact. And each migration is also accompanied by a fact sheet published through CMS. So this summarizes the migration. It summarizes current threats to that population, as well as details about the study, how the data was collected, and who the data providers were for that population. And so this example I've kind of been using of the saiga in Kazakhstan, we actually also have pre and post movement data from we also have pre and post construction movement data. So this railroad here was built in 2015, and it bisects the migratory range of this population of saiga. So you can see the orange lines are movement data collected from before the railroad went in, and the purple lines show this much more restricted migratory range after that railroad went in. And so this is an example of where we had movement data on this population, really good movement data before this big infrastructure project, but it just wasn't easily accessible or available to the Ministry of the Environment and to government planning agencies for this project. So this is the kind of information that the Atlas wants to capture and hopefully use to avoid similar issues in the future. And this has actually been a case study that's been used in Kazakhstan to inform other infrastructure projects that are happening right now. So looking ahead, we have 22 more corridor maps in the pipeline that we're currently mapping, and these will be published throughout this year. We also aim to map lost migrations and incorporate traditional ecological knowledge to characterize where migrations may have occurred on the landscape in the past before human development and other things may have caused them to become lost or to shift. And ultimately, our goal is to use these maps to bridge science with policy. We believe that maps and this atlas provide really clear, concrete, and tangible illustrations of where conservation action is needed for this very specific issue, which is ungulate migration. And to that end, we're hoping to connect with third-party web applications through our API and make data sharing a lot easier. So being able to move this movement data directly into other GIS platforms. And we're also looking to just build more awareness that this tool exists, that this is an ongoing effort that's intended to be comprehensive. So with that, we'd love to thank partners and funders for this project. And if there's time, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for that talk. So much of what you talked about is feeding into or relates to a lot of conversations that we're having at WILDLABS right now about how we go about integrating animal movement data into policy and into action and creating data standards and whatnot. So it's very, very timely. And I love graphical representation of movement data because that's the best way for me to understand how any of it actually makes sense in the real world. My question for you, especially with those sort of goals you mentioned about building more awareness and connecting to like third-party applications, what would you say is like the best way for people to get involved, whether it be like through building awareness or if it's possible for people to like share their data with you? What do you want people to sort of take away action-wise?
Yeah. Yes, that's a great question. I think sort of the bread and butter is just building this atlas and having it be increasingly comprehensive and representative of different species around the world. So data sharing is a great way if you have movement data that you want us to analyze for migratory behavior, or we're also offering trainings on our methodology. So how to use the program that we use to analyze these migrations. So we're also happy to train people and then have them like create the map. And we always share authorship on our fact sheets, and any products, the primary authors are the data providers. So we try to be really transparent and share ownership with that. So data sharing is great if you are aware of migrations in the landscape where you live. Even if we didn't have data, we could still look at ways to characterize them based on expert knowledge and observations. That's something that we're looking to do because we know that monitoring efforts are really expensive and can take a long time to like get started. So we can work on building maps based on expert knowledge. And then we're looking to start some sort of mini campaigns this year where we like look at a local landscape, is there a migration? Who are the stakeholders? How can we get this information out to different levels, people that actually live there, people that have decision-making power with infrastructure. So we're looking to run some campaigns around specific migrations. So if you think that there was a need in your area, we could definitely explore how to do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm gonna send you over to the chat as questions roll through. We got a shout out from Talia for your help in organizing our movement session at COP16. Thank you so much, Janey. And next we have Santiago Martinez Balvanera, who's going to be talking to us about how Bat Conservation Trust is integrating annotation workflows into their processes. So I will pass it over to you, Santiago, to tell us more about that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to talk here. Just gonna talk very briefly and more conceptually about this idea of integrating annotations into the work we do at the Bat Conservation Trust, which is bat conservation. So the Bat Conservation Trust, for those who don't know, is a charity based in the UK whose main role is to acquire information about bat population trends in order to inform policy decision and as well as development within the UK. And it's done this so far with the help of many very helpful and willing volunteers and also professionals collecting data for 30 or plus years. And as you can see, it's been quite extensive, but and with that, you can get some really interesting data or information about the population trends of bats at very different temporal and spatial resolution levels. So this information feeds into the UK statistics and is helpful for, as I mentioned, just planning of development and also conservation actions. The thing is, because most of the work is very involved, hands-on, the BCT is currently looking into scaling efforts and maybe filling out some of the current data gaps that it has by adopting acoustics. And in collaboration with people at UCL and the University of Edinburgh, we've developed BatDetect2, which is a machine learning algorithm that's able to detect these echolocation calls in recordings, ultrasonic recordings. So the thing is, our question at this moment is we're very keen on the idea of using machine learning as kind of a main ingredient within the data collection process, but we're kind of in this stage where we kind of have a handle of what the data collection aspect is. So we send out recordings to people or just do a grade, or there are many different survey methods where the BCT is using. But what we want to get out of this is this trustworthy population trend data. And I'm going to put it into kind of this industrial setting, what would the BCT need to do if we wanted to make sure that this population trend data is kind of very quality assured, let's say ISO certified. So what does it require for the BCT in terms of operation to make sure that this population trend data is verified or high quality? So there are a couple of actions that we have thought about what we need to do in order to improve the trustworthiness of the data that we produce. So first of all, of course, is improving the models that we already have. So incrementally improving them, which means expanding the training data. Second of all, a really important aspect of making sure that our population trend data based from this acoustic information is actually precise is doing a thorough evaluation of the performance of these models. But not only that, but also monitoring throughout the time, because you never know what kind of sounds might appear in the future that might be confusing the models eventually. We both don't want to confuse that changes in the environment with actual changes in population trends of bats. And also another big aspect of BCT work currently is that there's a lot of work that goes into validating the predictions. So not necessarily assessing the performance of models, but actually looking into individual predictions with an expert together to see whether the bat is actually there. And that's kind of a bit more hard ground truth data. So the answer to all of this is actually just put humans at the core of all of these activities. Of course, you have these companions, which are AIs that help to do a lot of the work and carry a lot of the kind of heavy work. but still humans and particular experts in bats, of which there are fortunately quite a few here in the UK, at the core. But now the question is, okay, so how do you do this in a way that's efficiently operation-wise, and that makes best use of the expert's time? So that's where we have this idea that we actually want to have this really easy to use and effective tool for interacting with the AI tools that are behind all these processing work. So the expert have this easy way of just providing the right information for those systems to work and to achieve certain quality. So this is the goal that we're working on at the moment. This is a platform that is kind of in initial design stages called EchoHub. So that would be kind of the human interface to all of these machine learning systems behind the work at BCT. So as we envision it now, this will help us interact in the ways I've just mentioned before, which is like validating, gathering new training data, measuring the performance of models. And in my PhD, I worked in this open source tool called Whombat, which is an annotation tool with the idea of making it really easy for users to annotate their data and then export that for model training and development. So we're currently looking into how can we use Whombat, which is an open source project, first of all, to kind of bootstrap much of the EchoHub development, so that'd be kind of a big part of the interface, but also thinking, okay, so what are commonalities of the BCT work that might inform Whombat development in the future so that others who use Whombat as an open source project can also benefit from our work. So yeah, this is what we're doing. We're at the moment kind of very early stages, just mapping out what the BCT requires for some platform like this to do. So we're identifying these BCT specific challenges, but also like broader shared issues with the idea of fitting that back into Whombat. And then once we have that really clear in our heads, we can go ahead and plan the development of EchoHub and also future Whombat development. So if you do have kind of similar experience building systems who have these data quality or more than data, prediction quality assurance and control, I'd be really, really keen on listening to your experience, but also just please reach out if you are thinking about similar things or have similar challenges at your own organization. How can we make acoustic data based on machine learning systems kind of high quality outputs? So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Open to questions.
Thank you so much for that talk. We have a question in the chat from Mandy, where she's asking if you've identified any risks or potential risks with using Whombat, and how the open source model might affect the quality of, I guess, data analysis over time.
So open source projects are always a bit risky in the sense that there's no, let's say, incentive to like respond to the issues that arise from the use of it. And it also is kind of very constrained in terms of like the resources it has to sustain itself. So at this time, Whombat is basically just me doing most of the development. And actually, because I have so many things to do with other stuff, I cannot dedicate enough time to developing it. But we are looking into different kind of funding routes so that we can sustain a bit more of my time working on Whombat. And our kind of more midterm goal is to have other organizations interested in the use of Whombat, so that we have a larger group of people working and interested in developing that tool into a more kind of mature and robust tool.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. There are some more questions in the chat, and I'm going to direct you over there to address those. But thanks so much for that talk, Santiago. And now we're going to move into our last speed talk from Samantha King, where she's going to be telling us about how Protected Seas is using repurposed sensors to collect data on human activity in sensitive marine areas. Whenever you're ready, Samantha.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. It's really great to hear about all these other systems, similar, but definitely different. So anyway, I am coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the senior scientist for the Marine Monitor Project at Protected Seas. We call it M2 for short, so that's what I'll be referring to it as. So what is it exactly? So M2 is a vessel monitoring platform, both the hardware and the software that you see here. It uses a couple different sensors, but primarily marine radar and a camera. And so if you're lucky enough to live near the water, you've probably seen a radar system like this. It's the exact same radar system that you would use if you had your boat. You would purchase this to have it spin so that you could navigate safely on the water and be able to see the location of objects and other boats on the water. So in this case, we repurpose it. Instead of putting it on a boat, we put it on shore, and it can monitor human activity on the water in the nearby area. And we get a really full picture of vessels all the way from commercial shipping down to kayaks. The system runs 24/7, so we collect data continuously during the day, at night, and it's really ideal for near-shore managed areas. So if there's a marine protected area, the system can monitor human activity in and around the area to make sure that the rules and the regulations are being followed. And then also just to kind of get an understanding of what the human pressures are on the marine environment in that area. And as you can see in this image, it's really helpful in remote areas. What we can do is put it on an off-grid trailer so that it can really kind of shed light on what these sensitive areas are experiencing, the pressures from humans, without having humans actually, having to be there on site to observe it. This, I should say, this is like the most high-end, expensive version of the system. A lot of our sites are really just the bare bones components of the radar, the camera, and then about a Pelican case size box that houses all the networking and the computers. And some of our sites will just, it'll be a ranger station or a marine lifeguard station where we can just put this on the roof, and we're generating data 24/7 from those locations. So this marine radar kind of falls right in the middle on cost and observable range of a lot of other technologies that I've listed here that you might be familiar with. Satellites are used to monitor vessels, usually offshore, kind of larger vessels, all the way down to just your basic camera that you could deploy on shore next to the water. But what's great about radar that I've kind of mentioned on the first slide is that it provides really consistent data, high resolution, but that it's also just a widely available, familiar tool. We've found that it's really accessible in many countries around the world. So it's really easy to acquire and then deploy out in the world. This is just kind of a glimpse of what the data actually look like. And just to orient you, the M2 location, so where the sensors actually are, is in the top right corner on the map. If you're familiar with radar or you've driven a boat before, you might be familiar with this radar imagery that you see in red. So you'll see objects in the water like an island, channel markers, things like that, but then also vessels. And so a couple of these vessels are named, and we get this from publicly available data from shipping companies that are legally required to share their information. So you'll see this large cargo ship. But then if you look in the top right, this track is only detected by radar, and the camera captured an image. And so our site partners will then know what large ships are in the area, but then also what recreational boats have come through the area as well. So you really get the full picture of activity. And for this site specifically, this is in the Salish Sea in Washington State in the US. Our site partners are interested in monitoring vessel activity in the habitat of endangered southern resident killer whales, just to kind of see what the different noise levels and potential interactions with humans are in the area. And so that is just one site. We have a lot around the world. We started in 2016 on the west coast of the US. So you'll see a big cluster of sites there, but we've been expanding, adding a couple every year around the world. And so this system was originally designed to monitor activity in protected areas to make sure people were following the rules and to understand patterns of use. And so, as you can imagine, following from that, we have a lot of interest in the research community as well. So using the system for science and conservation purposes. We have researchers and policymakers who really look at activity over time to find out where protections are working, what adjustments might need to be made, really just getting a rich understanding of the human pressures that local species and environments might be subject to from vessel activity. And so just really quick, I wanted to show you 2 examples of what that kind of looks like. So that live data on the left, this is a marine protected area in California. You can kind of see this is some fishing activity on the boundaries of the MPA. The 2 in the top right and left are most likely lobster boats dropping traps. And then in the bottom right, you can kind of see maybe a different type of activity, but clear that all are aware of the boundaries of the MPA based on the trajectory movement that they followed. And then when we look at all of the data over time on the right, we can really see these patterns stay consistent, relatively consistent over time. And so researchers in this case were able to kind of deduce that maybe, well, the fishers are definitely aware where the boundaries are. That's pretty clear. But maybe that suggests that the protected area is successful. It's generating fish that fishers want to target. And it's worth it to them to go to the boundaries of this MPA and have the benefit of the MPA being right there. So in this case, it was great to see that, you know, fishers are generally following the rules and maybe the MPA is benefiting them, which was really cool to see. So that's where I'll leave it. I am part of a pretty small team, so we are really, really responsive. So I'm happy to take questions in the chat or today, but you can always reach out directly, and either myself or someone else, like I said, we're really responsive. We love chatting with people. So really don't hesitate to reach out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that presentation. Like I said last time, I love data visualization, and it's so cool to see how the bounds of that MPA are being respected with like that, with the sort of the heat map element to it. We've got a lot of questions for you in the chat on between funding and signal range and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to direct you over there to get those answered. And thank you so much again for that presentation. Which brings us now into the ad break section before we go on to our long talk. So for ad break, I'm going to pass it over to Jake, who's going to run us through our ad break and our quiz.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'll be running the ad break today, and I will start us off with a quick mention of WILDLABS courses. If you haven't seen our emails or our homepage on the website, we've launched a new feature on WILDLABS where you can take e-learning courses related to conservation technology. We have a great selection already on there. So we have courses around camera traps, acoustic monitoring, introduction to conservation technology. And we will also be having an e-learning course on eDNA quite soon, possibly next week. So please do go over to the courses section. I'm sure someone will be sharing a link to that in the chat so you can take a look. But we also have the ability for you to create your own course if you want to share an in-depth e-learning course with the community. So go to our introduction article and you'll be able to see everything about this new feature. Great, and then next I'm just going to hand over to Henry to talk about a London meetup for WILDLABS.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, hi everyone, Henry from the WILDLABS team here. So this week, WILDLABS is participating in Nature Tech Week, which is a series of conservation tech events happening in London. And in particular, we are co-hosting the 2025 Nature Tech Unconference, the first of its kind, with the Nature Tech Collective, which is taking place at the London School of Economics campus all day on Friday. The event's going to bring together people from across the nature tech ecosystem for a series of collaborative workshops and panel discussions. But we'll be running a workshop on advancing interoperable nature tech data streams. So if that's a topic you're interested in, then please do come along. I'll post a link in the chat where you can find out more info about that. But as you can see on the screen, we're also running our spring in-person community meetup in London as well. And for those of you guys that don't know, we run in-person community meetups 4 times a year, every quarter. So yeah, straight after the unconference finishes at 5:30 p.m. on Friday, we're going to be meeting with people from all over our community at the 3 Tons Bar, which is the student bar on the LSE campus. So yeah, it's right where the unconference is going to be happening. We already have 94 registrations, which is amazing. So you're guaranteed to meet someone new and interesting, or you might run into someone you already know from the community. It's going to be a really, really great event. 2 or 3 of us are going to be there as well. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you. Please do come along. Anyone is welcome. And you can find out more at another link I'm going to post in the chat. So yeah, please do come hang out with us if you're in the London area on Friday.
Great, thanks, Henry. Next in the ad break, I'm going to hand over to Vanessa.
Thanks, Jake. Hello, everyone. I'm Vanessa from WILDLABS team. Tomorrow, the Latin American community at WILDLABS is hosting this virtual event about WILDLABS 2025, which is a global bioacoustic competition hosted by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology in collaboration with many other institutions, including Google Research, University College London, Humboldt institutions, and others. This challenge invites people with expertise in machine learning and bioacoustics to help identify understudied species using their acoustic signatures. This year's edition focuses on improving species detection across several taxa in a biodiversity hotspot of Colombia. So we are organizing this event in collaboration with Juan Sebastián Cañas from University College London to encourage more participation from Latin America. I see Juan is here, so maybe you want to add something. But anyway, I will share in the event link in the chat.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, I think we are on to the quiz section. I will be running this month's quiz. And as it said, it's somewhat related to all of our talks. So I will give you roughly 20 seconds to answer each of these questions. I didn't put this together, but I will try and do my best. So is everyone ready for the quiz? Could someone in our team please help read out the chat?
Yes,
because I can't see it.
I can take
Thanks
that.
so
And I've let everyone know that I made the quiz so that if there's a problem with it, that they can take it up with me and not you.
Okay, so the first question. What bird migration is pictured in this image? And you have a choice between land birds, raptors, shorebirds, or water birds. So what type of bird migration is this?
Someone messaged me privately saying shorebirds. We got some shorebirds, we got some water birds, we got one, Frank says raptors, but it's mostly, we got another raptor guess from Owen, another one raptor guess from Adrian, water birds for sure from Mandy. We've got mixed. Nobody seems to think it's land birds. That makes sense. But mixed consensus.
Yeah, those birds are running fast if they're land birds. Let's see. It's B, it's raptors. It's raptors. I wouldn't have guessed this myself because I have no idea.
Neither
would
That
makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, great. Next question. This might be easy if you know your penguins and you can see the blurry image. What penguin species is known to waddle 160 kilometers / 100 miles every April?
Okay.
Is it
sorry.
emperor penguin, king penguin, Gentoo penguin, or macaroni penguin?
Most people are saying emperor, except Frank, who is saying Gentoo. And I like that he's taken a shot in the dark about that. He's just guessing, so he says. And there's a fun surprise when we reveal the full image.
Okay. The answer is A, it's emperor penguin.
And he has a little GPS tag on him. Tiny
It's
tag.
tech related.
Yes. Frank is upset, saying, geez. We
Okay.
can't win all.
Next question. So which of these answers is not the name of one of the 7 migrating caribou herds in this picture? So which of these is not
Okay.
one of the 7 migrating caribou herds?
People are doubting that porcupine is the name of a herd. There's not a lot of consensus. People are saying A, people are saying C, people are saying D.
But if it's the name of a herd, it could be anything. It could be any
Exactly.
name.
Listen, you need a wild card question in the quiz. That could be
Okay.
anyone's guess.
So everyone's saying porcupine.
No, there's no one's sure.
Okay.
Which is just my intention. It's like, how am I
The
supposed to
answer
get
is
the name of the herd?
it's blue nose south. It's D. Because there is a blue nose west and a blue nose east, but no blue nose south.
And I think it's fun that there's a porcupine herd.
Maybe there's porcupines there. I don't know. Okay, next question. What are we looking at here in this image? Is it A, a crab crossing, B, a lizard bridge, C, a frog freeway, or D, a toad tunnel?
We got a lot of A, mostly A.
Okay.
We got one. Henry says B though. Someone
Okay.
else says B. Oh, we got some Bs. We got people thinking it's a lizard bridge between A and B.
The reference is somewhat of a clue. Okay, it's a crab. It's a crab crossing. I've never seen a crab crossing before, but it looks great.
I think
What type of crabs are they? Do we know?
That's a great question that
I'm not sure.
that I can find the answer to. Give me a second.
We can put it in the chat. Okay. The next question is, how much does an elephant GPS collar weigh? I assume it's this specific elephant GPS collar. I'm not sure if this is the average or if it's this one. Is it 7 kilograms, 16 kilograms, 10 kilograms, or 18 kilograms?
And it is specifically this collar, but
Specifically this collar, yeah,
I
the one in
assume
the picture.
we've got some C, B, A, B. 10 is not a letter, but is one of the answers.
Okay, it is C. It's 10 kilograms or 22 pounds. That seems quite heavy. It makes sense.
Elephants are big.
Long battery life, hopefully. Great. And I think this is the last question.
Yes.
But how many satellites are currently in space around the Earth? Is it A, B, C, or D?
A lot of
This
people
is
are
quite
guessing
tricky.
A. A lot of people are saying A. No one has said anything other than A thus far.
Okay. I suppose it's as far as we know. The
As
ones that are
far
recorded.
as we know, according to the source listed on the screen, which is where I found this information from. We got one D, we got a B.
D. Whoever said D, that is correct, according to the source. Yes.
According to the source.
11,833. And more. I assume there's going to be a lot more soon.
This is as of, I think the source said as of like March 5th. So that is,
Okay.
I'm happy to send the link in the chat because it is interesting.
Possibly good for conservation, not great for astronomers. Because now there's fake stars in the sky, but we'll see. I think that's the end of the quiz.
It is.
Thanks for playing. Thanks for playing. I hope everyone's kept track of their scores.
You don't win it.
You don't win anything. But now I'll hand it back to Alex for the rest
Thank you so much
of the session.
for leading us through that, Jake. And we're right on time and for our last talk, which is going to be our longer talk, and that is from Akos Ledeczi, and he's going to be talking about his work developing an animal-born acoustic shockwave detector. So, Akos, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I used to be at Hungary, but now I'm at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee in the USA. And this work has been a collaboration with lots of people and institutes, as you can see on the screen. To make sure that I have time for the acknowledgement, I put this slide in the beginning. So this project has been funded by Vodafone and also Vanderbilt University. And these wonderful institutions at the bottom have been helping us to actually deploy and test the prototypes. All right, so what was our motivation to go into this project? Well, of course, we all know that poaching is a problem, so anything we can do to help with that would be helpful. And my group at Vanderbilt has been working on acoustic gunshot detection, classification, and localization for over 20 years. We have been using low-cost sensors, specifically wireless sensor networks. So that was kind of one of the motivations. And we have heard about static deployments of shot detectors to protect wildlife. But the problem with those that they are not scalable. They protect a relatively small area and not necessarily the animals themselves. And then, of course, we have witnessed the proliferation of GPS tracking collars. So out of these four things came the idea of let's create a shot detector that the animals themselves wear, so it protects the animal. So let's talk a little bit about gunshot acoustics. So typically when people hear a gunshot, they hear the muzzle blast, which is basically the propellant of the bullet exploding in the barrel. But if it's a rifle shot, then more than likely it is a supersonic projectile that is leaving that barrel, and the supersonic projectile generates a sonic boom, also called a shockwave, and that can also be detected by the microphone. So if you look at the typical acoustic events when you record a gunshot, the first one is typically the shockwave itself, and the beginning it really looks like an N, a capital N, and it's a very unique event. Then you hear, of course, ground and other reflections, and then eventually the muzzle blast arrives at the microphone as well. But the shockwave is such a unique event that it's easier to detect and classify as a shockwave. So it's a better signal to focus on. So just briefly, what you can do with microphones when a shot is being fired. So here S denotes the gun that's being fired, and then you can see the trajectory of the supersonic bullet, and then M denotes the sensor. So if you have a microphone there, you can detect the time of arrival of the muzzle blast, the time of arrival of the shockwave, and even the length of the shockwave, which depends on the caliber and how far the projectile is from the sensor. Now, if you have multiple of these sensors, you can actually locate the shooter. If each of these sensors have multiple microphones, so a mini microphone array, and we have been building, let's say, arrays that are only, let's say, 3 inches aside, so 4 microphones, then you can also detect the angle of arrival of all of these events, basically the direction toward the shooter, because the sound arrives at those microphones at different times, and from those time differences, you can figure out the angles. Now, if you do all of these things and you have multiple of these sensors, you can locate the shooter, you can exactly identify the trajectory in 3D, you can estimate the speed of the bullet, the caliber of the bullet, and then even what kind of rifle it fired it. So that's just for interest that with these low-cost sensors, you can do lots of things with gunshot acoustics. Now, of course, for this project, the only interesting thing is the presence of a shockwave. So if a bullet flies close to the sensor, we want to be able to detect it that, hey, there was a gunshot. So that leads us to the overall concept of the system. So we want to integrate a shot detector into a GPS collar, and when a shot is detected, a shockwave is detected, we want to immediately send an alarm with the latest GPS tag that the device has. We don't want to wait for the GPS acquisition time, because in the meantime, they may destroy the sensors. But of course, we wake up the GPS, it gets a new location, so we can send an alarm with a better position than originally we had that information. All right, so again, this slide just shows that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So this unit is an add-on to existing GPS, commercial GPS collars. So optionally, they'll be able to integrate it into their system. And so our work only focuses on the board that detects the shot and then communicates this to the GPS collar. So this project started in 2007, a long time ago. So this is our prototype from 2008. This was for elephants specifically, so that's why this is kind of big. One kind of important factor that we actually use 2 different microphones. So a piezo microphone is attached to the wall of the sensor, and it's great to detect mechanical impact. So a mechanical impact may look like on the microphone similar to a shockwave, But with the piezo pickup and the regular microphone, having those two different signals, we can actually fairly well distinguish between mechanical impacts and actual shock waves. And then also there is an accelerometer on that board, so we can also monitor the change in the animal's behavior after a supposed shot. We should see a change if it was a shot. If it wasn't a shot, then probably there wouldn't be any change. Now the prototype also had an SD card just to record these shots for further refinement of our detection algorithm. Of course, the final device will not have the SD card. So we tested the prototypes in various settings on cattle here in Tennessee, and the San Diego Zoo was nice enough so that we were able to deploy it on captive elephants for a couple of weeks. We had some deployments in Kenya and additional tests. So we gathered lots of data to be able to test the detection algorithm. This is kind of summarizing the findings. Oops. So you see on the scale, the detection output is probability from 0 to 1, 0 to 100% of whether this was a shot or not. And you can see that even this prototype from a few years ago was pretty successful in distinguishing gunshots from other natural noises, specifically animal sounds or mechanical impacts and other nature sounds. So that this gives us hope that this will work well. Again, this is a work in progress, so we don't have a final product ready to be deployed. All right, this is just summarizing various ways of detecting poaching, specifically with guns. And basically, I think our approach kind of hits the sweet spot. So for example, it doesn't only protect one animal. The shockwave can be detected reliably within 50 meters. So if there is a herd situation, then a single sensor can potentially protect the entire herd. Now, when I say protect, of course, there is a caveat, which is, of course, if somebody is already shooting at those animals, it's probably too late for that poor animal. But if the alert goes out and the rangers can come and catch the poachers, then, of course, it really helps the next animal they would have killed. All right, so summary. So I described this variable gunshot shockwave detector idea. So it's still a work in progress. Of course, it has to be low power, and we did various tricks to make sure that this can last for about a year, depending on lots of factors, of course. I mentioned that we are using the vibration and sound to make sure that the false detection rate is very minimal, because, of course, you don't want to call the rangers if there is no shot, because eventually they will lose interest in such a system. All right, so we are still working on this. We need to finish the new hardware design, update the detection algorithm with modern AI-based techniques to make it even better. We still need to implement this motion-based behavior classification after a detected event. And actually, we are working with Savannah Tracking out of Kenya to integrate this into their color at first. And of course, we need to test it. I like to make sure that everybody knows that this will be open source and available for everybody. So it's even though we work with a commercial vendor, the design and the software will be released so anybody can integrate it into their devices if they want to. All right, so that was the shot project, but I briefly want to talk about another project that is ongoing. So this is a National Science Foundation sponsored project started in 2023. So the goal here is to related to, of course, the shot detection, but build an intelligent acoustic bilogger. So a low power animal-born acoustic data gathering device. So here you can see our current prototype. As you can see, it's very tiny. It's hardly larger than an SD card. And it has various operating modes. Of course, typically people have been using schedule-based, so you can just deploy it and specify when it should record and when it shouldn't. You also have a threshold trigger, so when it's completely silent, it's not going to just keep recording nothing. But more interestingly, there is this AI-based filtering and clustering method that we are working on. Basically, we are trying to identify events of interest and interesting events and rare events, and not fill up the SD card with detecting the same kind of noise over and over again. So this is an ultra low power design, so its power consumption is lower than MicroMoth, but it has much more processing power, which is actually nicely tunable depending on what you want to do on the processing side. And of course, a version of this will be used in the shot detector because it's much smaller and much lower power than the first prototype. All right, so this is based on the MBIC Apollo 4 MCU. It's an ARM core. Again, we are shooting for continuous monitoring for up to a year, but it depends on a lot of factors, your battery size or your sampling rate, configuration settings, SD card size, well, the goals of the project, and so on and so forth. So the AI-based approach is an unsupervised clustering algorithm that will create these clusters of similar sounds. And based on the deployment, we can either record all those sounds or just keep statistics about the clusters and representative samples out of those clusters. You can also add an additional classification layer where you can specify whether you want to reject certain sounds. So for example, we can classify wind noise and not record continuous wind noise. Or if you are specifically interested in a certain animal call, then we can have a classifier that makes sure that all of those kinds of sounds are recorded and the clustering runs on the rest of the events. All right, so I think I'm gonna wrap up here because time is running out. I just want to show some ballpark power numbers on this last figure if you are interested. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Yes, we've got, first of all, thank you for that talk. That's super, super interesting. And we love to hear that shockwave detector project is open source because we love that. And like I think Frank mentioned in the chat, we're going to be having a meeting on funding and finance open source projects soon. So we'd love to hear about that. We've got a lot of questions in the chat and some time to go through them. So I'm going to pick a few out to just read. There's one from Nathan Harris. That's a question on the AI-based filtering that you mentioned, asking about what AI models they use, because it's interesting to be able to provide AI-based filtering based on the size of the device.
Okay, so it's not one of the traditional models for classification. It's specifically an unsupervised clustering algorithm. So it creates a lower dimensional space where it groups similar sounds together. And the part where we'll decide what to record and what to discard is still not implemented, but the clustering itself works very well. And again, the goal is to somehow let the domain scientists decide what they want to record. And if we have a cluster with thousands of events, we probably don't want to fill up the SD card and use all our power on that. So in that case, we'll just, let's say, store the metadata for those events and just some representative samples. But the goal is to provide a configuration interface before deployment time to specify all these requirements and automatically configure the software for that deployment.
Great, thank you. And then we have two questions from Carly. One about which we can address in the chat if there's like a website or contact information for Wiper, and also what the cost of the whole system is. And Carly, feel free to jump in. I'm not sure if you meant the shockwave detecting system or that second project that Akos mentioned.
So I mean, the cost will be similar, and I assume by cost you mean how much it takes or costs to manufacture one of those boards. I don't have exact numbers because right now we are just running prototype development, and of course manufacturing 5 boards is almost the same cost as 200. So right now I would say that the prototypes, let's say a couple of $100, but if we go up to a few hundred, batch of few hundred, it's probably going to be under $100 in hardware cost.
Amazing. And then there's another question from Nathan that I think was like a clarifying question that you mentioned that the microphones on the shock detector collars, microphones are only 4 inches apart and can calculate trajectory angle.
No. So that whole multi-microphone configuration was for just a general overview of what kind of things you can do with acoustic detection of gunshots. So this the shot detector only has a single microphone and the piezo just for helping with classification. So the only thing we can detect with that or with this unit is there was a shot, period. Okay, no location or anything else other than the sensor's location from the GPS color.
Got it. Yeah, it's a super fascinating project and seems like it has a lot of really incredible potential use cases. And I know we're right on time, so thank you so much for that great long talk. Feel free to keep putting questions in the chat for those who are listening, and then Akos can hopefully pop in there to answer them. So again, thanks everyone for joining our Variety Hour this month and for our speakers for their lovely presentations. I'm going to end the recording in just a few seconds, but everybody is invited, as always, to stick around for after hours to have a more casual conversation about anything that we heard today or really any other topic you could think of. So thanks for coming, and we will see you next month on April 30th. Bye.